This is the Vanguard podcast. I'm Gavin.
And I'm Zac.
And we've just been joined by Christine Olivo, who's running independent to represent Florida's 24th district in the United States House of Representatives.
Women had to fight for the right. Black people had to fight for the right. Ex-cons had to fight for the right. They fought, they won, they lost their lives. Haters out there stressing, they want voter suppression, but they gonna learn a lesson when they don't get reelected.
How's it going, Christine?
Hi, everyone. It's going great. How are you doing?
We're great.
Yeah, we're doing well.
Yeah, it's a beautiful evening here in Kansas City. So you're running independent against incumbent Democrat, Representative Frederica Wilson, to represent District 24 in Florida. What I'm interested in hearing, first off, is why you decided to challenge Wilson as an independent rather than primarying her as a Democrat.
What a great question. So once again, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Christine Olivo, running in the 24th district. I decided to run as a non-party affiliate because the Florida DNC does not make it easy for, challenging an incumbent and getting on that Democratic ticket. So although my views align with the progressive Democrats, I knew that it was going to be an uphill battle. I knew how important the progressive voice was. And so in order to make sure that we had the best chance at winning, I decided to run as a non-party affiliate, which is great because in turn, I'm able to be a voice for all people. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't single anyone out, although my views are very progressive.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the reaction been like from voters when you talk to people? Is that something that they're drawn to, the fact that you're an independent and you can say that, you don't represent either party?
They're so relieved. I get so many people that are like, wow, like there was one conversation I had with a voter and we're going back and forth. And she says, you know what, just because I'm Black, you think that I'm just going to vote Democrat? I said, well, ma'am, I'm actually running as a non-party affiliate. She goes, huh? She goes, well, you just shocked me there. And by the end of that, she had a lawn sign.
That's
it's
crazy.
True. We can't just expect that people are going to vote based on, the color of their skin as a Democrat. We can't, we have to get rid of that. And so a lot of people have been excited that I'm running as a non-party affiliate because they're like, wow, you're actually really earning my vote right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said that you identify a little bit more with the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. That brings up your opponent, Frederica Wilson. You've made UBI a defining issue of your candidacy and have put it forefront, especially in this time of public health crisis. You've obviously realized that it's a policy worth pursuing. Have you seen any rising support for this policy among the electorate in Florida? And also, has it been noticed or addressed by your opponent, your Democratic opponent? Has she caught up to the times at all?
Absolutely not. Let's answer that question first. Absolutely not. She has not addressed anything. If you can find my opponent, I mean, really, it is very difficult unless there is.
Sounds like someone else we know.
Unless there's like a celebrity appearance that she needs to make, it is very difficult to find our representative. Now, how has the response been? Honestly, when I'm speaking to the constituents, the most important thing for them right now is getting their stimulus. They need another stimulus. So right now, the UBI conversation is we need economic relief. Yeah. Right now, they are out of jobs. Most parents are forced to be out of their job because of the virtual learning and having to guide their children. Yep. So we're really talking about economic relief, and that resonates really well because we haven't seen that since March.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think that there's a lot of merit to direct cash stimulus. One of the questions I had about your view for a universal basic income would be how you envision it being unrolled for a long-term, permanent, solution to some of the economic problems that we face. And I wonder what you make of the criticism that unveiling a UBI as a source as a solution to our problems would create continue to divide the country into haves and have-nots, those people who are surviving only off of the basic income, and then the class of owners who are making all of the profit. Do you have any concerns about that?
Well, I don't think anyone would just survive off of $1,000 a month. It would add to what they're already doing. So people are like, oh, people are not going to work hard and they're just going to live off of it. I don't know anyone that can live off $1,000 a month. It is just going to cover some extra basic expenses that you need. For example, I spoke with 2 single moms last week. They share an apartment in order to afford raising their children. They said if we had universal basic income, we would pay for childcare so that we could work. Things like that, or pay for, pay the rent so that they can cover food and expenses like that. So that's how I shut that down. I say, listen, absolutely not. We're not going to have people just living off $1,000 a month. It's not going to happen. People are still going to contribute to the economy. They're going to work, and it's going to enhance their life. That's what it's going to do.
I think that concern isn't so much, at least from my perspective, isn't so much if people would want to have other jobs that work as supplemental employment. My concern would just be right now as we look at, real unemployment numbers are around 20%. Obviously, the unemployment number that's peddled to the people by the government is highly inflated and off base and includes people who are working for minimum wage and anybody that's working over 28 hours, which certainly isn't a survivable wage. But that's definitely... So do you view it as part of in tandem with other policies, and what other economic policies do you support to, kind of stave off that unemployment?
Well, Medicare for all. Right now, many people have lost their insurance because they lost their job. Medicare for all would help alleviate that burden of not having insurance. I mean, before COVID, this district already, a quarter of our district does not have insurance at all, period. So we already have an issue there. Now, add on the people that have lost their jobs and lost their insurance. So I think Medicare for all is another amazing piece of legislation that we should pass so that we can get everyone the insurance that they need. It would alleviate pressure from the employers and from those that desperately need it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, another question I had, just going back to UBI a little bit, is when you're out on the campaign trail, or when you're doing, digital campaigning, however you have figured out how to do that, are people familiar with the concept? Are they, open to it? Have they heard of Andrew Yang probably? What's the basic reaction you get to the concept of a universal basic income? Because for, people like myself or yourself that are, really into politics, obviously it's a big hot concept, but I still feel like there's a lot of people out there that aren't quite familiar with it, and probably the first time they hear about it, they're a little bit mind blown.
Exactly. They're not into it. They don't know what it is.
Yeah.
We say UBI and they're like, what? We say universal basic income, and then they kind of get it. And honestly, I tell everyone, Andrew Yang didn't start this. Martin Luther King Jr. was talking about universal basic income. He called it a guaranteed annual income. That's what he said would help African Americans to get over this hump, right? This hump that we have been systemically oppressed, pushed back into, you know what I mean? So this would help alleviate that, help give us that push. He said in a speech, I love watching Dr. King's speeches, but it's called The Other America. And he talks about pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps, right? So, okay, you want to know why we don't pull ourselves up by our bootstraps? We don't have boots.
Right.
So you want us to pull us up by our bootstraps? Give us boots so that we can do that. So that's what I tell everyone. Dr. King was talking about this. This is not a new concept. And then everyone's always concerned, well, I'm going to pay more taxes. I think that defeats the purpose. Why would we take money from the people to give money back to the people? It just kind of defeats the purpose. Guess who can pay for it? Big tech.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really important thing to point out about UBI too, to people that maybe aren't quite on board with, maybe the full socialist agenda necessarily. The people that aren't necessarily down to pay more taxes, it is I feel like a good entry point into the left for a lot of people, because it changes the way their minds start to think about their government and what their government can do for them. But it also, doesn't necessarily threaten them with a bunch of scary taxes. And also, unlike even Medicare for All, which of course threatens the health insurance industry, which of course donates to so many of our politicians, UBI doesn't actually threaten any industry that's pre-existing. So I feel like maybe getting it implemented might be a little bit easier just because of that. Because like I said, the health insurance industry has such a tight grip on the politicians in Washington. Do you think there's any merit to that?
I do. And I agree with that. A lot of the reason why Medicare for All is not even being brought to the table is because Big Pharma plays a role in some of these politicians on both sides. Mm-hmm. So with universal basic income, we don't have that issue. Well, not that I've seen, but my team and I were really honing in and trying to figure out the best way to address these concerns with the community, because it's sort of new to them, right? And right now, the way I do that is just by asking them, you got the stimulus in March, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, what did that do for you and your family? And then they answer, and then I say, now, wouldn't that be great to know that you can get that every month? And then they think, wow, yeah, it would.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just to kind of follow up on the whole, obviously we're living through a pandemic of which the United States leads both infections and fatalities. And I noticed that you tweeted earlier today, I believe, that, housing is a human right. I wonder if you could just talk about how you envision bringing that to a reality where everybody in this country does have access to shelter and housing that's, clean and safe and, made for habitation. Obviously, we have some really horrible housing situations that people are facing in this country. And how do you propose we bring about a solution to that?
Great question. There's an entire area where our citizens right here in District 24 live in tents under a bridge. So we need to really look at the situation as a crisis. This is a housing crisis, and yet we are building sky rises right here along South Beach, and it's beautiful. But what about the homes for those? What about the homes for those that are desperate in the streets? So what I plan on doing is advocating for funding so that there's programs out there that are trying to help the homeless. So we've got to do that. Before we start creating new things, we first have to look at what are the programs in place already that are not getting the proper funding, and who is getting the proper funding but misusing the funds. And we have that going on right here. So first, we need to work on our structure and figure out where do we need to clean house so that we can build houses.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that I've been noticing as I've looked more into the housing problem in the United States is that the fact that real estate is one of the few places where the rich, the 1%, can really play with their money right now, that in the stock market. And so you've seen it become, if you look at a place, especially like Los Angeles or New York City, where housing has just gotten out of control, expensive, Seattle, there's almost every, high-rise, luxury $1 million property, they're owned by shell corporations, and they're just a way for the rich to hold and store their money and, accumulate more wealth. And it's driving up the entire living costs for the city and driving people out of, places like New York. I'm wondering if you would support regulation on things like that, and if you think that that's a part of the problem.
We need rent control. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I lived in LA for a little while, and it was a struggle. It was a struggle. And there were some apartment buildings that were rent controlled and some that were not. So we definitely need, across the board, we need rent control. Not only that, we need, in order for us to really combat this housing crisis, we need to stop selling public housing, and we need to stop privatizing public housing. Right now, down in Brownsville, which is in District 24, the public housing is privatized. So we've got slumlords that are making money off of Section 8. The money's not coming back into the community. People are losing their homes. And these slumlords, I mean, these people live in roach-infested places. No one cares about them. We need to stop that. You should not be able to privatize a public housing. Once we say that this is for the people, it is for the people and only for the people. Tomorrow we have a meeting down in Brownsville. We are going to fight to get that housing back. There are lots there with houses. They are unoccupied. We want our people back in them. We want them to be able to own their homes. We want to reform public housing in District 24.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's insane that's going on in our country. Of, like Zach mentioned, rich people buying up these skyscrapers while meanwhile the poor and disaffected communities live in squalor. It's disgusting and something that a lot of Americans don't even, I think, realize is really going on in their own country. So I thank you for doing that, and thank you for fighting back against it. Another question I had is, you're of course from in Florida, which is a notorious toss-up state that could quite well end up deciding the November election, as it has before. And pre-coronavirus pandemic, I would have definitely thought that Donald Trump, the president, had Florida in the bag. But just given how colossally he and the GOP has failed the people in the time of this crisis, have you noticed any sentiment in the state leaning in the direction of Biden and the Democrats? Not that I'm particularly excited about what they're offering, but given how uniquely terrible the Trump and GOP performance has been lately, I was just wondering if you've noticed a palpable shift in mood.
I have not. I'm actually a little nervous.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we cannot control what happens in November. We can try our best, but I don't know. I don't see anyone that is excited for Biden right now.
Yeah.
People are more excited to get Trump out of office, but it's not a driving force.
It was the same thing in 2016, right? People were excited to make sure that Trump didn't get elected, but that wasn't enough to get Hillary elected.
Yeah.
It wasn't. And a lot of people, even within this district, did not vote for Hillary because of the issues that Hillary has with Haiti. So that was just a disaster.
Could you talk about that a little bit? I feel like a lot of people might not be familiar with that.
So when the earthquake happened, the Clintons stepped in and offered to assist Haiti in its recovery efforts. In the middle of all of that, I believe money and contracts were given to people that necessarily did not trickle back down into the Haitian community. And the Haitian people are, they were devastated, hurt, still are. I'm sure some are torn. Some see it differently, but a vast majority see it as just a devastating time for us, and money that we'll never get back. That is money and contracts that could have gone to Haitian companies that we will never get back. So they did not feel comfortable voting for Hillary, and it really broke my heart. And then there's obviously more into it, and I don't want to get too much into it. Obviously, being a new candidate, I have to tread lightly, but I can't neglect the truth. And so that is how a lot of people felt.
I just think that it's important to shed light on that for people, because so often there's such a reductive response from the Democratic establishment to explain away the loss of Hillary Clinton that erases the perspective of a lot of different groups of people that maybe aren't interested in the policies that Trump is putting forward, but are so disaffected from the Democratic policy and the sordid legislation that they've been involved with over in the past, that they were just completely not interested. I'm wondering, as somebody who's running as an independent, Gavin and I have been covering the movement for a People's Party pretty closely. They recently had a convention which was led by speakers like Cornel West, former Ohio Senator Nina Turner, as well as journalist Chris Hedges and many others. I was wondering if in the future, if a movement for a People's Party were to begin running on things like UBI, Medicare for all, universal housing, would you be interested in running in a third party?
I would. I sent them an email. I was trying to speak at the conference too. I was like, I know I'm just like a little person in Florida, but can I please speak? Like I could be your candidate right now.
Oh, yeah.
But I didn't get far with that. I emailed Ryan Knight, but I would be interested. Although I've also been asked if I would be interested in running as a Democrat.
Mhm.
So there's options out there.
Sure.
My goal is just win in November.
Yeah.
And then everybody else can fight for me if they want
Fight for
to.
you?
But
Yeah.
Well, I know the
I'm
People's
fighting for
Party is
people.
the People's Party is going to start running candidates, I think, next year. So I'm sure they would be interested. I mean, they'd be foolish if they weren't interested in enlisting you. I think, in my opinion, that's if you don't win in November, which I think you, of course, have a good chance of doing. I also had one more question for you. If Biden does win, do you think there's any chance, any hope? I need some hope right now that maybe they'll enact a policy like UBI, any one of these sweeping, reforms that could really, really help people in a serious way that wouldn't just be a kind of technocratic, inch in the right direction. I was thinking that perhaps if Biden were just to frame it as expanding Social Security as a response to the pandemic, then that could be politically ingenious.
So I was actually going to say something along the lines of the minute this administration changes, the first priority is going to be to provide economic relief because of the pandemic. So I have full confidence that can then stem into the progress of UBI being placed on the table. Once we see that it is possible, once we see that it is beneficial, once we see that the people need it, the people want it, I do think that this is moving in the right direction. In a way, COVID has opened our eyes to things that we wouldn't have thought of before. So
Yeah.
I say we capitalize on that and cross our fingers.
Yeah. I also wanted to ask you one more, just a quick question. I noticed in the past week you were tweeting in response to the Julian Assange extradition trial. He's currently facing charges in the UK for extradition charges brought by the Trump administration, and you've been vocal in your opposition to that with the whole with the Free Assange movement. I'm just wondering if you could talk about that and what's occurring, and also if you think that on the topic of Joe Biden, if he would proceed with the prosecution and the extradition, or if he would back off of it in the way that Obama did.
Well,
Oh, wait. One moment. It looks like you are muted.
well,
Sorry about that.
I have been very vocal about it on Twitter, but I'm advised not to be as vocal about it because
Sure.
I'm just a little too extreme. But what I do say is I do think Biden will ease up. I don't think that he's going to pursue like Donald Trump is, and I think it's because people that are vocal are putting the pressure. So I just say, keep putting the pressure, keep being vocal, keep fighting for free speech.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. And I think
very
you're
well put.
correct. I mean, obviously, under the Obama administration, they tried to find a reason to prosecute Assange, and they decided it wasn't worth it because of they realized the journalistic implications of doing that as far as freedom of speech goes for other papers and publishers. So hopefully if Biden is elected, that you're right, he does lay off that and decide not to pursue it. I think you're right that Trump is kind of just being used as a puppet in this instance. Thanks so much for joining us, Christine.
Yeah, where can people go to support you?
Oh, awesome. You can go to www.christineforcongress.org, and that's Christine, FOR, congress.org.
Awesome. We'll put a link in the show notes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciated this time. I am so excited for you both and this show, and I hope
Thank
to
you.
be on again as your next Congresswoman.
Whenever you want to come back, you're absolutely welcome to. This has been an absolute blast for us.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Same
Yeah.
here.
We can't wait to have you on again, hopefully, once you win that election. And we just love talking with independent candidates, especially, that are bucking the orthodoxy, showing the way forward. So thanks for what you're doing, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.